Let's begin with prayer. Heavenly Father, send your Holy Spirit to work through your word in our hearts and then in our lives as we study this message that you are the Creator, but also as we live knowing you are the Lord of all things. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. There is an age-old question. It's a question that children ask their parents. It's a question that scientists have asked. It's a question that people ask. And that is simply this: where did I come from? Mommy, where did I come from? As a parent, I remember that question coming to us. And what did you tell them? The stork, right?
Ask your daddy.
That's exactly what happened in our house. Ask your daddy. And I just think that's one of the important questions of life. I mean, how you answer that question will have a number of different ramifications, won't it? Like responsibility, work ethic, morals. How you answer the question of where did I come from has a lot of ramifications, outcomes. And we see it in our world. We'll get to that a little bit later as we talk about the long-standing practice of teaching evolution as fact, even though it's only a theory that comes out of man's rationalization. And look what it's done in our society. But we'll talk about that a little later. Tonight, we're continuing our study of the Apostles' Creed. I believe in God the Father Almighty. We talked about that part last week. Maker of heaven and earth. That's what we're going to talk about this week. That He is the creator of all things. So, our first question for tonight is, how did the universe get here? There's all kinds of things there. You notice I put two worldviews down in your notes. The first one is people say it came by evolution. The second one is we don't care about that. Matter always existed. So it's always been here is the answer for some. And there's actually a third. A lot of modern geneticists today and also physicists will say we don't care. It's where we're at today that we're worried about and where we're going. I've had the pleasure of knowing some physicists that work for NASA down in Alabama, and members of our church body. And the guy's name is John Ball. He's retired now, but he was, I think he's responsible for the shuttle clock. That was his deal. And he worked out of Huntsville, Alabama. That's part of the space program there. And he said, you know, when he talks to his colleagues, he believed in creation, but his colleagues, they really never even want to talk about it. Doesn't matter to us. We know you can't prove evolution, so why worry about it? Okay? I didn't necessarily mean they believed in creation. Now, there's a lot of questions out there, I know, in the scientific community. But the fact is, evolution still is unprovable. I like sitting and talking to people that are evolutionists because they have all kinds of theories. And you can always ask, well, where did that come from? Where's the proof that connects them? And if evolution was working, how come all of a sudden it stopped? That's a big question they can't answer. You know, they have to come up with an idea, a hypothetical. Otherwise, you should be able to see it today. You have mutations, and I know that there's all kinds of things with mutation. The one thing that's really interesting to me today is the research on genetics. You know, the genetic structure of a human. How many chromosomes?
200.
No, chromosomes, there's 48, I think, right? Or is it 46? Apes are the closest to humans in the genetic structure, and they're one off. But that one is enough to make it impossible for one to come to another. So modern genetics really disputes this idea that we can come from a lower life form, okay?
23 pairs, 46 total.
46, yeah, okay. about 45 would be in an ape. So interesting stuff. Now, obviously, I'm not a scientist. Another question, over time, the origin of species, how did we get back before that, the billions of years? And of course, they talked about at one time there was a big bang and everything just blew up like that, right? But the matter was here before. That's why I put in here, then you have to believe matter's eternal. Where did the matter come from originally? Just out of nowhere? There are questions that cannot be answered in the evolutionary theory. Now, do you know why evolution got started in the first place? Huh?
Darwinism?
Yeah, well, Darwin was in the 20s or 30s. Yeah, but what was the premise behind wanting to find out where we came from? Apart from the scriptures, because the scriptures already said where we came from. Well, back at that time was the start of the age of reason. You have the industrial age starting up and everything. We don't need God. Therefore, we have to find a different answer where we come from. That's really what was behind the whole thing. We don't need God. But if you don't have God as the creator of all things, then you better have a substitute for that too, see? Kind of interesting, isn't it? Now, a few things down the page you'll see in there. Finally, it comes down to a matter of faith. One thing that I always had a thing, I remember talking with John Paul about this one too. You talk about the Big Bang, and of course, what that theory says is that everything is moving out away from each other. Right? Now, you like looking at the stars. How can you measure the stars? Well, they put a telescope up in space orbiting the Hubble telescope, and there's been others, so that they can measure better, because here's the thing that Einstein talked about, the theory of relativity and all of that kind of stuff. Everything is in motion, so you never have a platform from which to measure. Get my point? So the Earth itself is moving, moving, moving. So you put a telescope here to try to measure something there, and you're always in movement. It's hard to measure that way. So they have these computers now, and they put these formulas in to try to measure that. And that's where the Hubble telescope comes in. I think those are amazing discoveries. But the fact is that even with the motion of the solar system, kind of goes like this, it never keeps on going because of what keeps the planets from going out. What keeps us from flying off?
Gravity.
Gravity, yeah. So where did that come from? Well, mass. What I'm getting at is there's all kinds of things involved with this, and you just wonder, really? It just kind of happened like that? There was a statistician who was an atheist back in the 1970s. And this particular fellow wanted to prove that statistically evolution was possible. He lived over in Great Britain. And so he did the statistical thing with his big time computer of the day. And he came up and he said, statistically, it's almost impossible. It'd be like taking a 747 Boeing jet and taking it apart to its basic primary pieces. You know how many pieces that would be? Thousands, right? And put it in the biggest junkyard of the world, toss it like a salad. Now, in Great Britain, and a hurricane hit Great Britain. I don't know if any have ever done that. Has a hurricane ever hit Great Britain? And after the hurricane is done, you'd have a working 747 jet plane sitting there. He said evolution statistics are worse than that. Now, I don't know, I'm not a statistician, but even in the scientific community, evolution is something very hard to deal with, but they have to ask the question, where do we come from? okay? My personal theory, now this could be wrong, but this is what I think. I think evolution would have probably passed from prominence because I think the big time scientists would just not talk about it. Except for that it's stuck in our colleges today because our colleges basically are anti-God. And so it gets taught, especially in the teaching courses, and they keep teaching it in schools. And it's almost as if, well, if you're stupid if you don't believe in evolution. Well, I brought up these simple things as just counters to that. You can use them if you want to. You can research it if you want to. I don't have all the answers for all these quirks of nature. But again, I walk by faith, not by sight. And so the Bible says God created, and that's good enough for me. You got to have a lot of faith to believe in evolution. Take a piece of a bone and create a big thing out of it. That takes a lot of faith, if you ask me. Now, I do know they found full skeletons in place. I do know they found a mastodon stuck in a glacier in Siberia a number of decades ago. So some of those things we know about, and you can't refute that. The fossils, they're kind of interesting too. There's all kinds of things out there. The pressure that caused coal to happen. I mean, now, did God just create that in the world? He could have. Or it could have been caused by decaying trees with the force of water on top of it with the flood. Okay, I know there are scientists that could go through all of this, and Christian scientists that say, see, look, this makes sense. Or why is it in the Grand Canyon you have some of the layers upside down from the normal strata of rock? They're just upside down. Again, we could pull a hole, put a lot of holes in, and I'm not here really to scientifically disprove evolution. But again, the reason evolution gained any footage is because people didn't want to have God in the 1800s. They were shifting away. Believing in a God, oh, that's something for the weak and simple-minded. And yet and back then they didn't have all the scientific evidence. Again, I think genetics is my biggest today refutation about how you could have species go from small to, from a no cell to a 1 cell to 2 cell to 4 cell and so on. That to me is just amazing how you can believe something like that. Plus, you don't see evidence of it today. I'll throw one more in here just to give you another thing. What's the second law of thermodynamics say? I remember about 6 things from science. This is one of them. The second law of thermodynamics says that everything decays, which flies in the face of evolution. It says everything is getting bigger and better. Actually, the world history is everything's getting worse. Go figure. There's another theory that, does anybody know of any other theories of how we got here? Those are the 2 biggest. Man always existed, or evolution outside of creation. You know of any others? I know Jack had a lot of stuff he was thinking through with that science stuff because he was involved with that. I wish I had more time to talk longer with him about that, but he knows all the answers now, right? I hope he's not telling God what to do. He won't know. I know. He won't have time. Liz's mom is already doing that.
No. Right next to Rusty.
Mine too.
You've already said that.
Yes, indeed.
All right. No other theories of how we got here? Okay. There is one more that I have at the next point there, as you see it. That's where, I'm going off camera to do this. Almost sounds like there's a train going through or something. Where evolution and creation are combined. Have you ever heard about that? Technically, it's called theistic evolution. Theistic evolution. Back in the, maybe even started in the 20s, but in the 30s and 40s, what happened in the 20s in Tennessee?
Scopes monkey
The
trial.
Scopes monkey trial, yeah. And from that came this, we're going to now teach evolution alongside creation. So all of a sudden there are people that, at that time you don't have all the scientific stuff we have today. I mean, there's been a lot of discovery since then. So you have theologians going, well, we believe in creation, but now science seems to be saying this is how it worked. Okay, let's put them together. So God went to work and used the evolutionary process to get it here. Well, you have to throw away the clear teaching of Genesis 1 to get to that because of the word day and night, evening and morning. We'll get to that in just a little bit, which qualifies the day, and it does it backwards from human logic. So biblically speaking, there's no way you can get long periods of time. Not if you believe the Bible will count, okay? But I thought I'd share that with you. If you read stuff from that period, mostly people that had great intentions, but kind of didn't know their Hebrew very well, or their Greek. Still find that in modern Protestantism an awful lot, where they don't know the scriptures very well, and so on. Okay. Again, I'm not trying to bad talk people that are evolutionists. I just want you all to know that there's a lot of questions out there, even in the scientific community. And if you start looking at that stuff and go, let's just believe it. God did it and be done with it. You know, it's a lot simpler, isn't it? Plus, if man had something to do with his evolution, that detracts from the glory of God, huh? All right, the biblical view. I just started looking up passages that talk about creation. There's a few hundred more, but I didn't think you needed all of them. And these come from a spattering throughout the New Testament. There's more in the Gospels, Jesus himself. But I just thought this was kind of an interesting cross-section for you. You can look those up on your own if you want to do some more personal study, and then cross-reference those, and you'll find even more. But what I wanted to show here is that the Bible just assumes creation. There's really no doctrinal statements that God created the heavens and the earth. There are doctrinal statements that Jesus Christ was true God and true man, that there are two states, the state of humiliation and exaltation. That kind of stuff doctrinally is outlined in the epistles in particular. You don't have that with creation, it's just assumed. People assume that God created the heavens and the earth. And by the way, in all ancient cultures, there are creation accounts. So it was passed down orally until it was written down in all different areas and different cultures of the world after the flood. So, kind of interesting there too. Okay. Now tonight I wanted to make sure we were talking about other things than we normally do when we go to a doctrine class and talk about creation. But I wanted to review creation just real quickly with you too. It's good to review stuff from time to time, right? You can take your catechisms and look up under the first article. I forget what page it is. You can look it up. Scott's got it there. You can look that up and do some further study. There's some really neat stuff in that catechism. Okay, but let's look at Genesis 1 a second. After that long series of Bible passages, I put, like everything else in the scripture, it's by faith. Okay, if you go to Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1 or 2, what does it say there? Hebrews 11, verses 1 and 2. By faith, we understand, yeah. Anybody got that? I don't know what it says in the new translation here that we're using. You got the new one?
No, the NIV 11.
Yeah. Got it, Liz?
Hebrews 11, 1 and 2.
Well, I think it's verse 2, isn't it? By faith we understand.
For by this faith the ancients were commended in Scripture.
That's verse 3.
By faith we know that the universe was created by God's word, so that what is seen did not come from visible things.
Yeah, that's a good translation. So by faith we understand that the universe was created by God's word. God said it and it was. And so the writer to the Hebrews basically is summarizing Genesis chapter 1 for us here, right? Which begins in the beginning.
Okay.
Kind of interesting, the first book of the Bible does not start with a proper sentence. It starts with a prepositional phrase, which even in the Hebrew is unacceptable grammar. I wonder why God did that. Had Moses write it that way? In the beginning, it's kind of matter of fact. In the beginning of what? It can't be the beginning of God because God's eternal. He always is. So what began with the beginning of creation?
Start of time.
Yeah. So we got the creation of time there on day 1 of this universe's existence. Bereshith, in the beginning. Bereshith. Bara, eight Hashemayim ve'et haaretz. In the beginning, God created. The word create in the Hebrew looks like this. There's another word, looks like this. I think that's right. Asa, which is another word to create or make. The difference between the two is that in the Hebrew, bara is only used of the Lord. Only God can be the subject of this word, because it always means out of nothing. This word, create using stuff. So like Michelangelo's painting is his creation, right? But he used stuff to make it. That's the difference between the words. In the Hebrew, the word bara is only used of God's work. He is alone as the subject. So even in the word itself, we have this knowledge that God created everything, okay? And what does he create? On day 1, he creates the heavens and the earth, the Hashemayim. That's everything above the earth. And the Aretz, that's the world itself, okay? There's nothing other than what's above the earth and what's on the earth. There's nothing more than what's up there and what's here. Okay? In the Hebrew thinking, that's the way they thought. Okay? So the Lord created all things in the beginning, and he created the heavens and the earth. Now, one thing we learn from chapter 1, verse 2 of Genesis is that there were some deficiencies in the original creation. The earth was tohu vavohu, formless and empty, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. So there was no form to it. There was no nothing in it. It did not contain anything, and it was dark. Now, theologians will call that first creation on day 1, the start of it all, the primordial mass. That's because we don't know what to say, or what it sounds like we know, but it's just a big gobbledygook of everything that is in creation is sitting in that mess. Okay, you with me? That means water and dirt were mixed together, dark and light were mixed together, sky and land were mixed together. All of the things that are in the sky and all the things that are on the earth, living, animate and inanimate, we're all kind of in together in this gobbledygook primordial mass. Wonder what that looked like. So first God creates the stuff to create from, if you will. That's amazing. Here's the cool thing, everybody. On Judgment Day, after he raises all the dead and judges the living and the dead, believers and unbelievers, after he sends the unbelievers to hell, what happens with the believers? We get to meet the Lord in the air. By the way, the rapture doesn't happen before Judgment Day. It happens on Judgment Day after the judgment's over. And why do we have to be off the earth to meet the Lord in the air? That's in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. Well, because he's going to fire it all up. According to St. Peter, in the second epistle, God's going to fire the earth. Not you're fired, but torch it up. He's practicing now in California and Oregon and places like that. How easy it is for him. Little lightning bolt. Amazing, isn't it? But we're not going to be on there when he does all of that. We're going to have 50-yard line seats to watch him create the new heavens and the new earth. I think that's going to be pretty cool. What we believe by faith now that he did, by sight, we will see that. Wow. Wouldn't that be cool? Yeah. Hey, Jack, where are you? We got to sit and watch this together, you know? Honestly. Yeah? Amazing. So what does God do in the rest of the day one? He takes care of these deficiencies one at a time. First, he takes the darkness. And it says there that Vahior, Vahior. God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God separated the light from the darkness. Now get this. Light and darkness were occupying the same space. Now God pulls one out from the other so that the physical property of light and darkness can never invade each other again. Because where there is any light, there cannot be darkness. Well, we have shades of darkness, yeah, because of the brightness of light, right? But if there's any light at all, you can't have absolute darkness anymore. That's because at creation, God made those physical properties like that. So you've got that chart on the back page there. Days of forming or separation. Day one, all the stuff was created in that gobbledygook primordial mass, and light was taken from darkness. And ever since God put that physical property in place, it is like that. You never can have the two things together at the same time. So, on the earth, I think naturally, and some of you have heard me say this before, I think there's only one place on earth where you can achieve absolute darkness naturally. And deep in a cave, yeah. Anybody ever been down in a cave like that? I know you have, because we were there together. They turn the lights out, yeah. It's real clammy, right? You can almost feel the darkness. It's really icky. Turn the lights on again. Yeah. Day two. Day two, he separates the waters on the earth from the waters in the sky. Okay, I'm pretty sure, at least this is what I think, is on day two he put the water recycling system in place. You know, rains, gathers, evaporates, rains, gathers. Okay, and you have the waters above the earth from the waters on the earth. The one thing, though, that has always been a troubling thing is, was there a canopy around the earth of water? In other words, the rays from the sun would be filtered out in this water, because when the flood happens and it covers the whole earth, up is higher than the highest point, that's a lot of water. Where did it all come from? Well, the scripture said came up from the ground and came down from the wall. And up to the time of the flood, people would live 800, 900 years. What makes our life span short? It's the rays from the sun hitting us, right? Ultraviolet rays and whatever they all are, right? I know it causes cancer. So maybe there was something like that around the earth that would have given the earth a greenhouse effect, so that would be an even temperature around the whole earth. You wouldn't have the seasons like you do now. Remember, it was after the flood that God said that there will be seed time and harvest, summer and winter, and they won't cease till the end. So I don't know. The Bible doesn't tell us everything that inquiring minds want to know. That's why we walk by faith. But now you have the sky up there. What makes the sky blue? The light filtering through the water in the sky, right? I mean, so if you have a lot of water content, a lot of dew point in the sky is going to be a lot bluer. At nighttime, there's not a lot of light going through it, so it's dark. I don't know, it's something like that. I'm not an expert on all of that. But kind of interesting, though, to know that God puts the water system in place, and you have that separation from the waters above the earth and those on the earth. Day 3, God takes the other deficiency, he's working on the formlessness now, right? And day 3, he separates the water from the ground on the earth. So there can't be a water world, You can have water and dirt occupying the same space in short terms, we call that mud. You can have floods, but you will always end up with the flood receding. Correct? Yeah. Well, that's all because of day 3 of creation. So now he makes it possible for a place where he's finally going to put the chief creature, man, on dry ground. Okay? So that's all part of his plan. And then he also starts doing some of the filling on day 3. That's when he commands the ground to produce all the plants, the vegetation, Brussels sprouts, beets. Oh, I love beets. They're sweet. They go great with chicken. Oh yeah, beets are good for you. Cauliflower. You're going to end up in hell. I can tell.
No, I'm not. But beets are there.
Oh, they'll be there.
We might have a problem.
Yeah, but give praise to God for beets.
And squash.
And squash, yeah. I like squash, I just don't like the baby food squash. Yeah. It's not about the taste, it's about texture. But I like squash when you put it in a wok, good. Anyhow, the vegetation. So God starts filling the creation because he's preparing for living creatures, right, that are going to eat from that, sustained by it. Then we go to the second column, the days of filling. Outside of that, the vegetation, now he's going to fill up the heavens first. And I put it this way because day 1 and day 4 go together, day 2 and day 5 go together, day 3 and day 6 go together. So it's an easy way to remember. I started doing this years ago so that the confirmation kids could remember, the days of creation and how they fit together. But on the 4th day, God fills up the sky. Remember on day 1, he separates the light from the darkness. So if I asked you what came first, the chicken or the egg, you know the answer is the chicken. What came first, the light-bearing bodies or light? And the answer is light came first. And of course, even in physics, the definition of light is if you take your cell phone and you propel it at the speed of light, it becomes light. Okay? That's kind of I think that is a physical property, you know. They talk about particles in a vacuum, right? Being pushed at the speed of light. Now I bring this up because evolutionists, they're the people that put the age of the world based on how long light takes to get from a light-bearing body to the eye of a person standing on the earth. So you have the closest star to the earth outside of the sun is what, 5.6 light years? Did I get that right? I had it in the sermon, I just can't remember what I wrote. Okay, I think it's something like that, which means how long does it take light to travel in a year? Well, you multiply that by 5.5, and that's how long it took that light to get to our eyes. Okay? Therefore, the world has to be at least that old. That's how you date creation, if you're an evolutionist. Okay? The thing is, God created light first. So, on day 4, when he creates all of those wonderful stars and solar systems and galaxies, meteors, comets, all of the heavenly bodies, if you were standing there that day, you'd see those already. The light was already there. Now, I do know that they can see new stars forming, and I know that stars burn out. Their Duracell batteries wear out and they become black holes because they're all sucked up into each other. You know, I think that's something to do with gravity, but it just sucks it all up so you have a dark hole. Those things are happening, I believe, because of sin in the world, because God said all creation has to put up with the effects of sin, doesn't it? It's in Romans 8. That's something to think about on your own. But some of you know how much I love to look up at the stars. By the way, I got to talk to you about that because I can't get it to work. Yeah, because there's something I'm supposed to hook into or something. I don't know. Maybe I got the wrong. I'll have to show you. But makes me mad. I've been trying to go on and I can't get it to work. And then had my son look at it. Liz looked at it. We can't figure out how to get it active. What's the name of that again?
Skyport.
Skyport, in case you're watching. You could put your phone up and then see Constellation will tell you what it is. Mine's not working, so it might just be peace. But anyhow. So day 4. What was the primary purpose of the sun? S-U-N. It was to rule the day, right? And the lesser light is a satellite called the moon, reflects the sunlight that rules the night. Right now, as it's getting closer to a full moon, it gets pretty bright out at night this time of year. Getting close to the harvest moon, I think, pretty soon. It's October usually. Okay, so you got that. But what's the purpose, the other purpose of the heavenly bodies? Navigation, but even more important than that is times and seasons. We measure time based on the movements of the heavenly bodies. Now, early on in the history of the world, we know that they really marked time with a lunar calendar. By lunar, we mean the moon. And so that's where these winter festivals came in, because the moon is about 28 days that it takes to go around the earth. And they knew that if they kept just 28 days times 12 months, after a few decades, all of a sudden summer would be winter and winter would be summer. And so they added on all these extra days and they became the winter festival days. Some of that stuck all the way into the New Testament. Some of the ancients, like the people in Babylon, and I think the Egyptians too, they knew about the moon, but they marked time with a solar calendar. But even that's not exactly right? How long does it take for the Earth to get around the sun? 360, yeah, that's rounding it though, right? Yeah, it's not, it's a little more than that, right?
365 and a quarter, right?
Yeah, so what happened, not quite a quarter.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not exactly a quarter, so every 4 years we add a leap year in there. But that doesn't help either if you keep going out. So I think it's every 200 years they add a second day, so you have a 30th of February to even it up, and even that's not exactly right. I just think that God throws those things in there to screw everybody with everybody's head, you know? You know, kind of, that's like, you know, when I was a kid growing up, where does the axis point of the Earth? Points up to the North Star, right? What's the name of the North Star? Polaris. Yeah, it's up over here. And the thing is, though, about every 2,000 years, Polaris is not the North Star anymore because the Earth's axis moves over. I think it takes about 4,000 years for it to go full cycle. So Earth is going like this while it's going like this and around, as I said before. I think those are amazing things. And even how far it goes out in its elliptical orbit and comes around varies. So that sometimes it's coming a little closer to the sun than other times. Well, I wonder if that's part of it. Global warming? I don't know. God has all these things. And then you throw Pluto, poor Pluto. Pluto got kicked out of the solar system's planetary thing. They actually have now reinstalled it as a secondary planet. I forget what they call those. Do you remember secondary planet? Because it doesn't go on the same plane as the other ones. It kind of goes across it, right? But Pluto, poor Pluto. I always felt bad for Pluto.
Apparently now he's getting laid off too,
Pluto's getting laid off?
from Disney.
That's funny. Okay. I could talk more about this, maybe not as intelligently as a lot of people, but I just think it's kind of a cool thing to look at the solar system and
God bless you.
This is ridiculous. I should have a mask on. I'm far enough away from you so it all falls first before it gets to you. No, those aren't spots on your lens, on your screens. Oh, that's gross. Okay, day 5. Day 2, he creates the water, separates the waters from the earth and above the earth. And now he fills the sky and he fills the waters on the earth. And so you got all the winged creatures. Now the Hebrew isn't as specific about birds as you might think. Things that fly. That could include a lot of things, you know. And then in the water, things that have the water as their primary place of living. So that might include water mammals too, okay? So the street creatures and the air creatures is probably the best way to look at that. I think that probably the reptile class was created on day 5, and I think the bugs, anything that is like that, probably day 5. The Bible's not that specific, so we're just guessing. Just think about all of the things that need the sea to live. You know? Then you look at the reptiles. So I would guess that dinosaurs, not the ones that necessarily walked around on the earth, but the ones that were relying on water, they probably were created on day 5. We have some of that class still alive today. We call them crocodiles and alligators and geckos and lizards. And, they're all out there. Some have become very popular. They sell insurance. Just saying.
And polo shirts.
And polo shirts, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is Dod or Dod is or Dod?
Izod.
Izod? Sounds like a foreign god, doesn't it? Must be getting late. Okay, so it would also kind of maybe the creatures that were on that day, a lot of them survived by laying eggs. I don't know if that's something that's worth saying, but birds lay eggs, right? And lizards and reptiles lay eggs, fishies lay eggs. Yeah. So, I mean, day 5. So now we've got a lot of the stuff is moved in to creation, both in the sky, got all the lighting system in place and the navigational systems in place, the calendar systems in place. A lot of the living creatures are in place. And then we get to day 6, where he now starts filling up the land. And so you have domestic creatures and you have wild creatures, mammals being created. Now, here's the thing. When did Moses write this? Sometime between 1444 and 1400. Those were the years of the, or 1440 and 1400. Those are the years of the Exodus when Moses is writing this. So when he talks about clean and unclean animals, or he talks about domesticated and undomesticated animals, he's writing it for people that understand the difference between cows and lions. Okay? And so you have to realize that when he's writing it, he's given us a brief summary of what God did, because they were asking the same question, how did we get here? And so God gives, through Moses, his people, this is how you got there. Up until then, it was a oral tradition, so they were passing it down orally, and that's how the creation story got into all these different cultures, okay? The oral transmission of the creation. They're all pretty similar too, which is kind of interesting, even after a millennium of passing it down. You know, you're talking about a few millennia. Because Abraham is 2100 and now we're 700 years later when they're actually in the Exodus. You know, so that's almost a millennium right there. Okay? Just something to think about. And then you have the flood, and before that, people live in how many hundreds of years? So, day 6. We have another passage in Hebrews. Let's see if I can find it quickly here. Hebrews 3, verse 4, I think. Take a look at that. Otherwise, it's in that faith chapter, and I just didn't write it down. But this tells us that. You got that? Is that the one with the builder?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead and read it,
For
please.
every house is built by someone, and God is the one who built everything.
Yeah, God is the one who built everything. So the picture of building a house is used to help us understand how God did his creation. So he gets it all ready, does all the grading. And then he starts building the walls and the floors and the ceilings, gets the house all built, and then he starts moving stuff in. Does the landscaping, then he brings the lighting in. You see, he fills the house, and when the house is all done and all the furniture is moved in, then he puts humans in, which is the last and chief of his creation. Now, I don't know what day the angels were created. There's a little bit of thought about that, but we don't know for sure. Some people think that, trustworthy theologians over the centuries think that it was the 4th day of creation when the angels were created, because sometimes in the Bible they're called the heavenly lights. Okay, maybe not. It doesn't really matter, but sometime in the 6th day creation he created the angel class. Okay? And sometime after day 7 and before the fall, that's when they fell. Okay, we don't have specifics on all of that. We know it happened, but exactly when we do not know. Then he creates Adam and Eve, and he doesn't create them like he creates all the other creatures. Okay, the plant creatures, he commands the ground, and up they come. Okay? Now this is another thing that you can see why people without faith in the Lord Jesus and don't believe that God is the creator would look at an old world. Because by the time animals were living in the world on day 5, 2 days after the plants started to grow, there was already food for them. Now, when we were kids and we went to science class, remember the old film strips where they showed you photosynthesis? Kids miss out on all this cool stuff now. But remember how from the ground up you saw a plant grow? And they kept, because they took pictures every day of it, and then put it all together. I kind of think that's what it must have looked like. Because I know it takes a whole long time for you to get apples off an apple tree. It takes years. Right? Now, when you buy an apple tree over at the store and you bring it home, they've already produced apples by that time. But if you take a shoot and root it and plant it, it's going to take years. But it was 2 days or 3 days and fruit's growing. So by the time Adam and Eve show up on the earth on day 6, the world looked like it was here a long time already. In fact, if we would be able to transport ourselves back to day 6, at the end of the day, after Adam and Eve were created, we would think the world was there a while, because Adam and Eve, even when they were an hour old, did not look like an hour-old human. They're fully grown. Okay, I think God plays around with unbelievers sometimes. They don't trust him, but he makes it he gives them things to think about, Okay. God creates humans. You see the verses that I have there. He creates man. Now the word for man here talks about, it's Adam. He creates humans. But he also creates them male and female, right? So Genesis chapter 1:26, I think, is what it says. And God said, let us, so now we have the plurality of God. We talked about that last week. Let us make man in our own image. And so in the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Now there's an interesting thing that happens in Genesis here. And that is that in Genesis, Moses uses this technique a number of times, where he drops the main line of the story and he backtracks to explain something a little more, and then he picks up the storyline again. There have been theologians that have said there's a double creation account. Chapter 1 and then chapter 2 is a different one. So there were many, many humans, not just Adam and Eve. Now the Bible doesn't support that at all, especially when you talk about the fall into sin. As by one man. Then death came to all people, for all have sinned. It has to be, we have the same parents originally, Adam and Eve. Okay, so he gets to verse 3 of chapter 2, and then he wants to explain more fully what that meant, that God created humans in his image. And that's chapter 2. Then in 3, he picks up the story again. Now he does that with the story of Esau. He does it with the story of Ishmael. So there are other times that Moses does that in Genesis, and we believe that's just a literary technique that Moses used in his first book. Okay? With me on that? When God creates humans, he creates the man from the dust of the ground, it says in chapter 2. When God created the fish and the birds on day 5, he said, let the waters teem with and let the air be filled with. When he created the mammals on day 6, the earth-walking creatures, He said, let the land produce them. But when he creates humans, he doesn't just command the ground or the air or the sea to produce something. He actually forms the man himself. And he breathes into man's nostrils the first time you see CPR. And he breathes into them the breath of life. Now the breath there is the word ruach, which is the Hebrew word for spirit, wind, or breath. Like the Holy Spirit, the Holy Ruach, the Ruach Adonai. And so we see that when a person dies, that breath leaves him. Okay? And that's when the soul and body separate. Okay, so what God's doing is he's making this piece of dirt that he's created now alive with the soul, with the spirit. That's why I kind of think that the human is made up of two things, body and soul. I know there are many faithful people that think it's body, soul, and spirit, but I don't see a big distinction between soul and spirit. In the Greek, mind you, the spirit would be the nephesh, and the spirit would be spiritus, well, that's Latin, but the pneuma. And so you could see in the New Testament, because of Greek theory, soul and spirit, but they seem to me to be the same thing. So it's one of those open questions in the Bible. You don't have to, I mean, you can think of it either way. It's just the body is different than soul and spirit, okay? Now, to be a full person, you have to have the body, soul, and spirit. When we die, our bodies are still our bodies, no matter if they decay immediately in cremation or they decay in the ground. But we're not really ourselves, you know. You can eat all the Kit Kat bars in the world, you're still not going to be yourself until you get your soul back. That's a commercial on TV. You're just not yourself.
Snickers.
What's a Snickers bar? I should know that. All right, Snickers, sorry. Delete that. Okay? And so he created from the dust of the ground. And then God gives him the name dirt. That's pretty cool. Adam is just the Hebrew word for dirt, male dirt. If you're a female dirt, then it's Adamah, you know. The man, though, is called Ish. That's the Hebrew word for male. Isha is the feminine form of that, and that makes it a female. So God created them. Now, God showed Adam his deficiency, that there was something missing yet. Now, remember, all of the first 6 days of creation, God's eliminating deficiencies, isn't he? Okay? So Adam goes, and the Lord has all the animals pass in front of Adam, and whatever Adam called it, that was its name. The past tense there is a curious thing. Now, I know you're not going to read a lot about this, but in an advanced Hebrew course, Genesis course, it was kind of neat working with Professor Lavrens, who now is with the Lord, but he was kind of a big-time expert in Hebrew. And he brought up this past tense of the word, that was its name, to let us know that Adam had no deficiency in his understanding. Whatever Adam knew, he knew perfectly. There was no error in his thinking, which is part of the image of God, right? The image of God, you're without sin, you're without guilt, you're without error. What Adam knew about the God of creation had no flaws in it. That didn't mean he knew everything, but what he knew was perfect. So when he's naming the animals, he knew exactly what God called it. You get my point? That was its name. Yeah, God said, yeah, that's what I called it. That was its name. Now, that's one way to look at it. The other is that Adam actually named the animals. I'd rather give that to God, you know. But either way, again, that's one of those questions that our faith doesn't depend on it. So if you want to look at it the way most people do. But I think it's just amazing to see that Adam understood what God did. And one thing he noticed is that there was a deficiency in his life. Male giraffes had female giraffes. Male elephants or female elephants. And he knew what God said to him at creation. There was a threefold purpose that God gave to his humans. They were supposed to fill the earth, subdue the earth, and they were supposed to take care of the earth. Science is in there, by the way, the subduing of the earth. In other words, they're supposed to bring all of creation into subjection for the benefit of humans and the glory of God. So when scientific things happen and people find these new things about God's creation, that is what humans are supposed to do. The problem is they give glory to themselves instead of to God who created it. But the idea of filling the earth, Adam could not do that by himself. It just doesn't work that way, as we know. You have to have a man and a woman to produce a child. Even today, if they, artificially inseminate, or not artificially, but, you still got to have a man and a woman. You can't have two women or two men to have a child. True? So Adam knew there was nobody here. I could not do what God put me in the world to do. I can't subdue it. I can't take care of it. And especially, I can't fill it. And so God, after showing Adam that he needed a helper that was suitable, then he puts Adam in a deep sleep. We have the first surgery in history. And he takes out a rib. And he forms the woman not from the dust of the ground, but from the rib of the man. Sin only treats women like dirt. You think about it, huh? And Adam understands it right away. He comes to after God wakes him up after this wonderful sleep. He doesn't have to worry about recovery because he's perfect, And the Lord presents the woman to the man. Really important. The woman to the man. God did not create wives. He created women. To work with men to fulfill God's purpose. And it's only because of sin that we get that all screwed up and mess up our marriages and our relationships, males and females. And Adam says, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh, quite literally. She shall be called Isha because she's been taken from the Ish. Then God says, for this reason, because he created women for men to complete his purpose, he says, for this reason, a man will leave his father and mother. You notice it never says a woman will leave her father and mother. It never says that anywhere in the whole Bible. But a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. And you have the perfect marriage, even though it wasn't made in heaven, it was made in a heavenly way. The only time in history that there was a perfect marriage, except the marriage between Christ and his bride, the church. Isn't that interesting? And only when sin comes in the world, we'll talk about that in a couple weeks, only when sin comes in the world, our marriage is screwed up. They didn't know how good they had it, did they? And we could go and talk about roles of men and women and all that kind of stuff. But you see the purpose. The female-male relationship, women are not supposed to be subservient to men. They're supposed to be working together to fulfill what the man doesn't have, the woman gives. It's only when we get our roles all mixed up that we screw that up. So really, women have been taken advantage of for centuries. I want to apologize for that statement, because it's the truth. And you can see why women have rebelled against that. All the abuse, it's still called the silent scream in our society today, the abuse of women. It's ungodly, it has no place. Okay, question 3, what duty do we have? You all know this. Thank, praise, serve, and obey. Praise, thank, serve, and obey. And you can take that and think about that. There's all kinds of things. The thanking, thank God for your life, for crying out loud. It's precious. It's precious. Even with all that sin has brought into our lives that have given us grief, both the sin in us and what sin does to us, Takes people we love away, like our parents and spouses and sometimes children. It causes wars between people and nations and everything in between. It makes politics a mess. Then we go down the line. Praise, that's our whole life of worship, right? Serving. God didn't create us to be served, but to serve. Christ came into the world, not to be served, but to serve. Now, yeah, in his exaltation, we serve him. But that's not why he came. And finally, to obey him, that Luther added to his explanation because of sin in the world, we need to be reminded to obey. Adam and Eve obeyed perfectly until they fell, okay? And then question number 4, I'm going to elaborate on next week as we talk about how God cares for it. And I wanted you to see some of that ahead of time because talk about things like global warming. You know, is God really preserving his creation? Well, he will up until the time he says it's enough. Then the stars and moon will fall from the sky. Anyways, we'll talk about that next week. Does anybody have any questions now that I lectured unstopping for the whole time? Threw a bit at you tonight, huh? I tried to make it a little different than normal, as we normally would go through it, this first article. Tried to bring a lot of different thoughts in to get you thinking, okay? But in the end, even if we don't have the answers for every aspect of creation, we do have the answer. God did it, he knows. We walk by faith, not by sight. And finally, you cannot prove creation any more than you can prove evolution. So it's a matter of faith, okay? Now, if the Bible truly is the Word of God, then that becomes our source and becomes the basis of our faith. Anybody? Let's close with prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you that you gave us life, that you created such a wonderful world. We confess today that the human race, and we probably had a part in that too, has destroyed so much of your wonderful creation. We look forward to the new creation of the heavens and the earth where everything will be restored to its original beauty and that I long to see one day. Until that time, though, keep us faithful, help us to preserve this place, care for it, but to give you glory and thanks and praise as we obey your word every day of our lives. Because we know that through Jesus, you have made us your people. You have given us forgiveness and life and salvation. And so, Lord, preserve our faith in you as our Creator and Savior. Amen.